Hey everybody, welcome to the Tom Rowland Podcast. We're brought to you by Starbright. Today we have a podcast with a gentleman named Elliot Stark. Elliot has been very active since the last time I saw him. The first time I saw him, into the blue, caught a sailfish that had a tag on it. Scott Walker reached out to the Billfish Foundation and connected us with Elliot, who helped us to find the person who caught the fish to begin with and tagged it. It was a cool story. We did a great show on it, and Elliot was on the show also as an interview. So I haven't spoken with Elliot since 2012, and since then he's done all kinds of stuff. He's run a big mothership operation in Panama. He's done a bunch of other stuff, including literally writing the book on travel fishing. It's a book about billfish and other fish, all worldwide. All of his travels combined to determine where's the best place to go for each person, which is a very important thing. There's some places that you go, all there is to do is fish. That's it. Some places you go, you're going to be on the mothership the whole time. Other places you go, there's tons of activities, not only for you, but for any non-fishing people in your party. His book is the first book that I've heard of that really goes into this detail, but not only just that, food, drink, and so many of the other things that go along with fishing. I'm really looking forward to reading it. I have not read it, but I think you're going to enjoy this podcast with Elliot. He is a guy that has a tremendous amount of experience traveling the world in search of billfish, and put it all into a book. And you can get that book at, fishtraveleat.com. That's where the book is available right now. All right, here we go.
This is Elliot Stark, author of the book on travel fishing, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast.
Elliot, how you doing, man?
Doing great, buddy. Good to see you.
I know. It's been since 2012. You remember what we did in 2012?
Yeah, man. You guys caught a tagged sailfish and took the tag off and reported to the Billfish Foundation.
That's right. Scott Walker reported it as he caught that fish. I think we actually have a picture of that fish I found this morning. But that was super cool. And what I found out again this morning, I had kind of forgotten about it and doing some research on what you've been up to. That fish was caught in Boca Raton and then recaptured in Key West by somebody named Mr. Greenberg. I don't know what Mr. Greenberg's first name was, but that was super cool. So you were working, that is the one. And then, the tagging and the recapturing, and that's a pretty good distance going from Boca Raton to Key West, but I bet you've gotten way more interesting stories than that. Do you have any other stories that you can think of that were pretty interesting with recaptured billfish?
Well, I started out with the Billfish Foundation, and they're one of the world's leaders in tagging and recaptured fish, and so like something of like 90% of the stock of sailfish in the Western Atlantic come through South Florida in the wintertime. So it's a pretty neat deal that coming from Boca to Key West, but boy, there's a whole lot more like them. But in terms of like recaptured fish, I mean, blue marlin and tuna and black marlin, I mean, they span entire ocean basins. So it's really interesting. I mean, bluefin tuna, there's some of their tracks have been pretty neat. There's two spawning aggregations, one in the Mediterranean and one in the Gulf of Mexico. And there's some mixing that happens in the Atlantic. So every once in a while there'll be, fish that come from over here and go all the way over there and, span thousands of miles. And
that's thousands and thousands of miles. Like, what is there any that you can remember that surprised you while you were doing any of that work?
Well, it's you stop being, surprised. I mean, one of the things that was super interesting was we had a scientist that we worked with by name of Dr. Freddie Rocha, who was in Venezuela. And so he worked with a whole bunch of artisanal fishermen on the Guaira Bank. And so these guys would catch, all kinds of billfish, and many of which would be tagged. And so he offered, I believe some kind of reward for bringing the tags in. And so he had a sort of a centralized location that was down there. And I mean, fish came from all over the Atlantic. And,
really?
It was pretty neat to see.
What else is done with the data, like the Billfish Foundation? When you get all this data, what What do they do with it?
Well, they compile, a lot of angler information, and then they send a lot of the tagging reports and stuff to the National Marine Fishery Service, and then that's used by fishery scientists, across, different management bodies to figure out, to put into programs and algorithms about like how many fish are in the ocean and how many people are trying to catch them. And the interesting thing is that it's, there's the biological information that comes, but for part of the thing with tagging is the, angler information also, and the ability to show like the amount of, economic activity and the amount of money generated and the amount of tourism that comes with fishing. And so that's what, working with, Ellen Peel and Peter Tribongside and the team of the Billfish Foundation, I was super fortunate, and the late Dr. Russell Nelson, they were doing, cutting edge work to be able to show that, healthy oceans promote healthy economies, and trying to get, governments and officials in different places to recognize that the amount of money that they bring in from tourism is a direct reflection of, fisheries, as opposed to, the traditional way that fisheries are managed just in terms of, evaluated just in terms of like pounds on deck. And, but keep them in the water, people keep coming to fish and,
Is there a place that comes to mind that took that data and changed the way that they were fishing? I know that we had a number of people. I had this one guy, his name was, he's the Jungle Angler on Instagram, and he helped to have a couple of places understand what the economic value of the arapaima was. And instead of just killing that big fish, which is a giant fish, and so, I mean, that's the equivalent of like taking a cow. I mean, it's going to feed the whole village. And he went and showed them that fly fishermen would come down there and pay a lot of money, and that was a big change, but it was also very challenging to go someplace and try to convince them that is the case. Do you have anything with like billfish that was something similar to that?
I believe in 2009, Russell Nelson, who was the chief scientist of the Billfish Foundation at the time, he and a guy named Rob Southwick, who is an economist out of Jacksonville, they spearheaded a socioeconomic study out of Cabo San Lucas, and it was an economic impact study of revenues generated by traveling anglers coming to fish. So in Cabo, Cabo was built on the backs of striped marlin. So before there were the golf courses, before there were the breweries, for all the Michelin star restaurants and all the things, it was fishermen coming there to catch lots and lots of striped marlin. And what they found was that fishermen and their families coming to stay in hotels and buy fuel and days charter and spending money in restaurants and on, throughout it input $1.125 billion US dollars per year into the economy of Los Cabos. And so super like groundbreaking work to be able to say that like fishermen coming to catch fish, support not just, mom and pop here or, this guy running a boat over there, but, economically, like macroeconomically, significant impacts in terms of the economy. And they did another study a little while later in Costa Rica that compared the relative value of sport fishing's economic impact to that of commercial fishing.
Really?
And it showed, and it's been a while, but that I believe that sport fishing comprised something like 2% of the GDP of, the gross domestic product of the nation of Costa Rica in terms of tourism. Wow. So you think there, that the sailfish, roosterfish, the Cabrera snapper, and then that's before. It was in 2012, so that was before all the fads and things, and all the people going down there to catch all the blue marlin that they've been able to stack up. That have like sort of changed forever what people consider to be a good day of blue marlin fishing.
Right. That is incredible. I had Rufus Wakeman on. He was talking about those fads and his experience there. That has really changed the game. I mean, it used to be a few fish was amazing, and now it's, if you have the location of one of these fads, which is a fish attracting device, FAD, and people will. I mean, can you describe how somebody would put one of those out? What that entails?
Well, it's pretty. It's more complicated than you might think. But I mean, to do it out there. Oops, sorry about that. In deep water, most of the guys will take out like a barge or a mothership type deal that's equipped with like a crane, and they'll have like a big anchor that's made of concrete or steel or what have you, that's connected to a whole bunch of like metal cable, and they'll drop it down, and then have the top of the metal cable, and there'll be shackles every however many feet. Put that down on the bottom, and then the top of the cable is connected to like a buoy or some kind of flotation. And then on top of the flotation, they'll have, just a whole mat, or, different people use different things, but, tarps, palm fronds, things that sort of take up space in the water column. And they'll keep them like not on the surface, but maybe 50, 75, 25 feet down, something like this, just so they're not run over by, boats or trawlers or shrimpers or whoever, or found by,
right. Fine. That's what I was thinking. Found by anybody else, probably deep enough where you might not even be able to see it out of an airplane.
That's it. And so then they'll keep the numbers, and then they'll go out and put them in sort of a sequence and troll around from one to the other, that kind of deal. And so it started. They've been using fish aggregating devices for years. The tuna fishery in the Indian Ocean uses them to great effect. To like catch all kinds of things, but and sport fishing guys have used them because it's a universal deal. You put something out, the ocean's vast empty space. If there's something that holds structure, attracts bait stays there, fish come to eat the bait. You have a place, instead of burning your eyes out, run around wasting, hundreds of gallons an hour, run around looking for stuff. You go straight to it, and there you are. But, since then, the success they've had in, Gulf Vito, they put out, more fads in Costa Rica, and there's some in Panama, and there's fads even sort of all over the place. And you could even talk about in the Gulf of Mexico fishing the oil rigs. Basically it's the same principle.
Yeah.
A little bit more involved and a little bit different to look at, but same sort of process.
Yeah, out in the middle of that, off of Louisiana, I've certainly been out there where you just go out into the middle of the ocean and there's nothing else out there until you hit this oil rig, or even one of those mobile ones that's on on the boat. They collect around that too. But yeah, that's fascinating. But that has changed the game as much as the sonar has probably changed the game. What do you notice with that after all your years in this kind of industry, and you see what's going on with the sonar in the billfish world? What's your opinion on that?
Well, it's interesting. There's like two sides of the story. If you talk to guys who have them and use them, they're the greatest thing ever.
Right.
And so you can sort of go and the Omni from Furuno was sort of like the first and to make the biggest impact. And it's sort of like real time, being able to like follow blue marlin or sailfish or tuna or what have you. And so it's made it quite a bit easier to catch fish. Fundamentally, the catch numbers and the daily release records in a number of places have changed forever because of this technology. And so from that perspective, it's great, because anytime you have people out going to catch fish and making it easier, and it's good for the industry. Then on the other side, you hear people who do not have the thing because they're sort of awfully expensive to install and to operate. So sort of, a lot of tournaments, have the opinion that like it's just changed things. So you take away like the skill from a guy who reads the water and, who's been doing it and knows and grew up in the cockpit and, been doing it and learned how to catch blue marlin in a way that, involved knowing and reading water. And then you turn it into, some people say, like a video game, or, you're able to write a check and win a tournament. So,
well, I don't know about that. It's a different skill for certain.
Sure.
And a different application of that skill. You're going to have somebody inside probably watching that all the time.
Sure.
Which, I don't know. I found that it in the bass fishing world right now, you also have forward-facing sonar debate.
Sure.
Like there's technology, forward-facing sonar. It's changed bass fishing, and a lot of the bass fishermen that I've had on have varying opinions on that. But I have been asked what I thought about it, and I thought, well, it's already been done. Like I'm not really a billfish guy, but from what I know about the billfish world, there were some complaints, and they said, okay, cool, we'll just have two divisions. So we'll have this tournament, we'll have a sonar division, and we'll have a non-sonar division. And so that got me thinking about how you could do it in the bass fishing world. And what I thought about that, I thought was a pretty good idea, and then I told a couple of people, including Mike Iaconelli, about it, and he thought it was a pretty good idea too. But I was like, what if you have, say, 12 tournaments a year? Let's say you can use this technology in 8 of them, or any number, 4 of them,
Sure.
10 of them, whatever. But you have to decide before you go,
Sure.
that you're going to use this, and if you're on that, if you've decided you're going to use it and it's not effective, well, that's you. Too bad. Like you've decided that was your thing, and so then you bring in all this strategy about, okay, well, which lake should I use it on? What time of the year is that? Will it be effective? And then you can have somebody that's not even in the standings, but they haven't even used the forward-facing
Sure.
sonar, or the opposite. They're winning, but then they've used up all their opportunity to use that technology, if that's what they're really good at. And then I think it brings in a lot more strategy. But
Sure.
I think the offshore guys have led the charge there with just 2 different divisions, because that seems to make sense.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's sure fun, and that's the good thing about fishing, is that everybody has opinions and there's no right or wrong, So you hear the guys that say, oh, well, the sonar is terrible, blah, 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 and then think about it. I mean, the same guy's got, a seakeeper on his boat, and, he's got like the latest in technology of everything else and just doesn't have a sonar, So it's not like...
It kind of comes down to, it's terrible if somebody else has it and they're smoking you.
Right.
Then you, then it's
then
terrible.
you don't like it. If you're a
Right.
tournament
but if
donor,
you're really good at it and you've got the first one, you're going to love it, right? And you win a bunch of money and win a bunch of tournaments, and then it's the greatest thing ever. And the same thing's going on with the forward-facing sonar in the bass fishing world.
Sure.
Some of the younger anglers are, just a little bit more. It's a little bit easier for them to learn than some of
Sure.
the older anglers. But plenty of the older guys are doing well with it too. But boy, is it a hot debate? I mean, dang.
Telling you.
It's
like bass fishing, it's even, it's harder for the bass. I mean, because you can pull up right on top of the thing, and the bass have less area to go, and they're more structurally dependent,
Right.
And
but it's funny, like with bass fishing and offshore fishing. I mean, both of them, people have been doing that, both of these types of fishing, for a long, long time. And then you get this new technology that allows you to see them, and inshore anglers too, with drones, right? Like you can now see these fish in a place where you couldn't see them before. With a forward-facing sonar, now you're seeing that there are fish in places that you never thought that there were fish
Sure.
before. With the offshore sonar, you're able to track a fish and see which way they go. Like I've always wondered that, like, you spook a tarpon or something and you're like, well, it was just right here, and then I just lost track of it and it just disappeared. Where did that thing go? How could it have gotten away? But you learn so much from those technologies. But there's always this kind of ebb and flow of, well, if you learn about these bass being in this deeper water, and then everyone spends all their time fishing for them, eventually the bass is going to be like, I got to find another place. They'll go back to some other places that they used to fish. So whatever is old is new again, and whatever is new kind of is old again at some point. But
Sure.
I don't know. Those guys, those bass fishermen, in order to be very successful today, it's kind of like MMA almost. Like
Yeah, right.
there was a day when someone that had a single skill set, like a boxer or a wrestler
Sure.
or something, could win in that. But it's gotten more and more and more competitive to where now no one with only a single skill set can really do very, very well. Or maybe there's an outlier, but that's kind of the thing with fishing. It's kind of cool like that, actually, that you have to have all these different skills. If you're going to be in the tournament world, you have to have all these different skills, and be pretty good at all of it. Sure. You can't just be, I just don't do that. Right. Like,
right.
I don't know. You're not going to win much. But that's cool. I think that, it doesn't seem to be I don't know, maybe there is even a bigger debate in offshore fishing than in bass fishing, because you got people that are spending tremendous amounts of money on boats and travel and everything, and then they get there and they don't place in the top 15 because they don't have the sonar. That would tend to make somebody pretty mad, I would think.
That's it. I mean, that's what some of the tournaments just had to change it up or risk losing, participation.
Right.
So,
Right.
What's the right answer? Who knows?
So, what have you been doing since 2012 when you were working at the Billfish Foundation?
Man, all kind of stuff. I moved to Panama and ran a mothership-based Marlin fishing lodge in the Pearl Islands. Yeah.
What was in what island?
The Pearl Islands off the Pacific coast of Panama.
Yeah.
So it was great. I took people from all over the place, all over the world,
Dang.
and caught giant black marlin, big ass yellowfin tuna, and cubera snapper, big rooster fish, all kind of stuff.
What was the mothership like?
It was great. It was 163 feet. It held 90,000 gallons of diesel. Had 6 staterooms. We had a crew of, 25, and we were fishing wide open. We had 4 sport fishers, and we had 3 chefs, and 3 hospitality people, and a whole bunch of fishermen, some deck guys, a couple engineers, and kept it all running, and had a good time.
Wow. And so would the boat just stay out all the time and the anglers are brought there by helicopter, or you having to go in every time you got a new party?
We'd keep the mothership out for like 3 months at a time, basically. Mm-hmm. And we were on Isla del Rey, which is the biggest of the Pearl Islands. So it's like 60 miles offshore of Panama City. So we'd provision the boat with, a cargo panga sometimes, about once a week. And then we would fly guests out to the island because there was a strip. And we'd come pick them up on a panga on the beach and bring them out to the boat and, take them fishing from there. And we'd take the boat back to the city sort of every 3 months for a month to just kind of, get everything. And then for a couple months a year, we would go up to Coiba Island, which is near Golfito, near the Costa Rican border. And, fish the Hannibal Bank. And, just beautiful country. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And, one of the most beautiful remote places in North America. And the fishing's wide open. And, so it was great. Wonderful thing.
What was, out of all the fish that you're fishing for there, you mentioned cubera snapper and marlin and everything else. What was the most impressive fish to you to catch?
Man, for me, it's black marlin. They're so cool. They're the most, they're great. They're like mysterious. People know relatively not much about them. Panama is probably the best place in the Northern Hemisphere to catch the things. You know? And where you find them, blue marlin are more widely distributed, and they're sort of more offshore. But black marlin, typically you'll find them in a spot that has access to some deep water, but shallow, like a pinnacle or a high spot. So kind of more coastally associated. And it's great you catch them a lot of times down there, live baiting. So you take a bonita and bridle them up, and then pump troll, 2 or 3 bonita behind the boat, and then doing it early in the morning when it's slick calm and you're within sight of land, and you see fog coming out of the rainforest. It's like an oxygen factory, and then bait starts going nuts in the rigger and pop out, and bam, there he is. And black marlin are awesome. I've heard my buddy's from Australia, so he says a blue marlin is an angler's fish, but a black marlin is the crewman's fish, because you get them on the leader, and oftentimes they boom, jump straight vertically out of the water. Just big, thick. Their pectoral fins, once they're above 300 pounds, are locked out. Whereas blue marlin can fit them back in, and big black carries its weight in its head. Kind of like a grouper does. So it's just got a giant mouth, and sort of the base of their bills are big and thick, and they're just incredible fish. And even the little ones are great. The big ones are awesome. The biggest we caught was 750, 800. And like
750, man.
It's a good one, man.
That's a fish.
It's a fish. And so, I like to say that blue marlin and black marlin are both awesome. You can't go wrong, right? But for me, a lot of times blue marlin will jump, but they seem frantic. A lot of times they'll seem scared. They jump around, they're windshield washing, they're just greyhounding all over the place, doing circles, half circles, this, that, and the other. It seems like their hair's on fire. They're like, shit, just jumping around all over the place, Black marlin will jump, but they never seem scared, They seem measured, and they're almost like, you want some? Come over here. You know what I mean? Let's do it, And it's just, it's great. They're my favorite fish in the world. If I could just, catch one kind of fish, it'd probably be that, But,
so when you're on this boat and you're running, are you also doing any mate duties? Are you getting to wire one of these fish?
I was the general manager and the director of fishing, so I had to kind of keep everything running and make sure that nobody was, screwing anything up too bad. And my fiance at the time, my wife now, she came down, and so she was in charge of the inside stuff and the hospitality people, and then I was in charge of the outside. And so I would try to keep everything going, and then I'd fish, 4 days a week, kind of as a second mate kind of deal, where I'd be there to kind of help the clients understand what was about to happen, explain things, and sort of like curate the experience, and then help gaff things and leader fish and just kind of do all the things.
I would imagine that wiring a black marlin, a big black marlin, would for a mate. I mean, and I think of fishing like as the angler and as the guide, and there's so many things that I can think of that I would consider to be even more of an accomplishment, like as a guide, like landing these big tarpon or grabbing a hold of a giant hammerhead or something like that in the inshore world. But that of wiring that black marlin for a mate, that's got to be the pinnacle of handling a 750 pound black marlin, and you're doing it basically by hand. Like that is, first of all, it's super dangerous, but that has got to be the pinnacle of what you can do in sport fishing.
It's pretty neat. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, to watch some of those guys that grew up on the Great Barrier Reef, heavy tackle fishing, and what they're able to do, and using 600-pound leader and just just incredible. But yeah, it's something, man, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know, like, what every fish is different, and then you have like little ones that go all crazy, and you have to worry about things coming in the boat, and you have big ones that do this, that, and the other, and I mean, it's wonderful.
I've never caught a black marlin. Are they aggressive towards the boat? Like, will they come at the boat?
Well, they I mean, I don't know if aggressive. I mean, they can jump all crazy, and
sure.
they typically go airborne quite a bit, like on the leader. So it's not unheard of for them to come in the boat,
Yeah.
And I mean, one time I was wiring like a little one, 200 pounder, 150 pounder, whatever it was, in Panama, and then I was sort of on the right side of the boat, on the cockpit, and he came up jumping on the left, and I was pulling, and then as he came in the air, I was pulling, and he jumped, and I was like, oh, we don't want that, so just threw it and let it go and hope for the best, like get away from that thing,
Yes.
And but yeah, I mean, you've seen, everybody's seen those pictures and videos from Tropic Star of
right.
thing coming up and stabbing people, and
I know it looks like they could be aggressive in the way that you described. The difference between a blue marlin and a black marlin jumping kind of made me think about a swordfish, because a swordfish is one of the few fish that we've caught on any of the shows that I don't let people swim with anymore.
No. Those damn things are aggressive. They're mean.
They are so aggressive. We had one come after our diver, and we have this video, and the diver is in between the boat and the swordfish, which is the wrong place to be. Like, you could be on the outside where the line is holding the swordfish back, but
Sure.
when you're in between, that's the danger zone, and he knew it, and he knew he was in the wrong place. But he had this scooter, like an underwater scooter with the cameras are all attached to it, and he had that in front of him, thankfully. And this fish, he's videoing it, and this fish is going like this and making a turn, and then you see its eye turn, see the diver, and then turn and come straight at him. And luckily, he had this scooter, which was a super hard plastic housing all around this scooter, and the bill went in about 6 inches into this super hard plastic and then broke off. And dude, I mean, that's not the first time that one has been kind of aggressive towards something in the water, even the motor or anything in the water. Like those are aggressive fish, very very
like
dangerous
dinosaurs.
fish. I know, and a cool thing that they can do. They can go from the deepest part of the ocean to the surface and not have barotrauma like so many other fish. It's a wild thing, and the way that that it's been described to me about how they can route the blood flow somehow to their brain. So in that super cold water down there, they still have all of their senses, and they're able to hunt. Like, it's a wild fish, the swordfish. Does the Billfish Foundation study swordfish too, right?
Yeah, they're sort of like a gray area. I mean, they have some tagging of swordfish, but like swordfish are managed as I mean, marlin are strictly game fish, so swordfish are, managed in some ways as commercial fish. There's like quotas for their harvest, and they're able to be sold. But the Billfish Foundation was like instrumental in, along with a bunch of other groups, and closing the Florida Straits to longlining,
Yeah.
which happened, earlier, sometime around the year 2000. And it's an area that's super important for their spawning. And, so swordfish is a great conservation success story. It was closed commercially because the stocks were in terrible shape. And, they've since rebounded and been, done very well. And combine that with like sort of daytime sword fishing and the techniques that have, been popularized and started, down in the Keys and are now, used all over the world. You have people catching swordfish in places where they never did before. And,
Well, that was what I was going to ask you when you were talking about like the stocks were low and things like that. They were certainly low in the way that people were catching them. But I wonder about like as you have the daytime sword fishing and people are now fishing for them in a lot of different areas. I wonder if the stocks have come back or if there was a whole population of fish that was just not getting fished for.
Well, I think that people certainly weren't fishing for them in the way that they are now, but there was a whole lot of commercial activity in a place that was very important for the fish in terms of spawning.
Right.
So it's like if somebody was setting up on top of one of those like mutton snapper spawning aggregations and just waylaying them, you know what I mean? And you can do sort of a greater amount of harm if you're in a place that's more important. So it's sort of being thoughtful in terms of resource use, and that's kind of what the Billfish Foundation has done for a long time.
Sure.
It's like not
So after this boat in Panama, what brought that to an end? Getting married?
Yeah, well, it's just like you can do that for a while, but it's a lot of work, and so we went down, with the idea of being there for a while and then coming back, and so then we got married and bought a house and had a couple girls, and
nice.
so I started working with In the Bite magazine, and
Okay.
I was editor in chief there for 4 years, and had a great time. I got to see the world and travel, and I'd gotten to travel quite a bit with the Billfish Foundation too. I've been super fortunate, and did that for a while, and then I started my website in 2020. It's called Fish Travel Eat.
And, I was on it this morning. It's good. I like it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. You got some really good articles on there, and some that we have the hot seat questions. So I created some hot seat questions for you based around your blog. We'll get to that later. But
all right.
So is that what you're doing now? You can do it just with the blog?
Well, I've written this book on travel fishing. Sort of like an outgrowth. Of this, and I provide content services for I do a bunch of writing for a bunch of people in sport fishing and beyond. So
what was the idea? How did you come up with the idea for the book?
Well, so when I was with the Billfish Foundation, I got to travel all over the place. Every country in Central America except for Honduras. I gave a speaking engagement in Brazil and fished on the Royal Charlotte Bank for a couple days.
Nice.
Giant blue marlin. I got to go on like a 3-week tour of Australia. Gave a tour of fishing clubs from Sydney all the way up to Cairns on the East Coast. Gave a talk for the Sport Fishing Club of the British Isles in London, and went to tournaments across up and down the eastern seaboard and the Gulf of Mexico, and then went down to Panama and had people. A lot of my bosses were Canadian. They had 3 salmon lodges in British Columbia. And so we'd get an awful lot of people coming down from Canada to go, want to catch marlin and tuna. And then, so when I came back, to the States, my joke was that there was a time for about a year that, like, anytime anyone from Canada wanted to catch a marlin, they would call me, and ask where to go. And so, I'd been thinking, and then, came to In the Bite, and, its readership is primarily like professional sport fishing captains and boat owners, so a super technical audience, And I would have people who, would spend a lot of time and a lot of money fishing for different things. They'd call and ask, hey, where should I go about this? Where should I do that? And put people in touch, And so it had been kind of floating around my mind, for a while to do something like this. And last July, I said, well, hey, let's go. And so I started it up. And at the time, I didn't realize what an undertaking it would be. The book has grown to like 588 pages. And, I'd like to say that it's the most comprehensive offshore fishing resource ever published,
Wow.
So it profiles 70 of the world's best offshore fishing destinations. And to do that, I called people that fish in each of those places. So, and then I called them because if you send somebody an email and ask them, they send you a line or two about this or that, and you're stuck with that. But sort of my approach was, well, I'd like to get to the bottom of it, and then there's a whole lot to the fishing experience. There's places that are great, but they're super rough. There's places where you can go, like Cabo San Lucas, where you can go catch a whole bunch of striped marlin one day, and the next day you can go, ride camels on the beach, or go parasailing, or go to a brewery and have great food. There's other places, like some place in Panama, where the fishing is great, but like it's super remote and hard to get there, and you're going to fish,
Yeah.
And so then there's places like Costa Rica that are sort of a mix between the two. So how do you find the right place for you? Well, it turns out that like matching your expectations of a place and what you would like to experience with a place that can deliver that is important. And I didn't think that there was a sort of resource that was able to do that, so I decided to write one. So it has 70 places around the world. I mean, Costa Rica, the Azores. I talked to Frothy da Silva there, and or Zach Conde in the Azores, and Frothy da Silva in Madeira. The Great Barrier Reef, and like 6 places in Australia. Cabo, Guatemala. Talked to Tom Francis, who runs a mothership, a sport fishing operation in the South Pacific. Talked to my buddy Bon's Fleet, who has a lure company out of New Zealand, and talked to a buddy of mine in South Africa, and told me about Mozambique, where to come, when to come, what you can expect. And it's all tied together with, there's aspects on food and experience and the kind of rums that are available there, and what you can expect, the seasons, how big a fish you can expect, and there's a whole lot of nuance involved. And so to me, it was important to do it right. And so it was an awful lot of time, an awful lot of effort, but like I'm super proud of the result. So it's sort of like...
Is the presentation like a coffee table book, or is it more like a reading book?
Well, I guess both, because it's 6x9 and it's paperback. And so it's meant to be used, and so it's like everything that I know about this stuff. And, I've talked to, I don't know if you'd say who could say it's the best group of fishing people assembled in a book? But I could say that if you were going to assemble the best group of fishing people in a book, there'd be a high degree of overlap.
Yeah.
And so it's basically, there's like 7 books in one. So there's the destination profiles. There's profiles of 22 charter operations and fishing lodges around the world that I would feel good about recommending to a friend or somebody who hadn't been doing it before. There's species profiles that introduce, blue marlin, black marlin, white and striped marlin, sailfish, spearfish, wahoo, yellowfin tuna, bluefin tuna, and mahi-mahi, with best places to catch them, some high points about how to do it, and, some like recipe stuff. And then I worked with a good friend of mine, Chef Cosmo Goss, who is, for my money, the best and most interesting chef in sport fishing. And we put together the Fisherman Chef cookbook. And so these days, everybody in the world, if you catch a yellowfin or bluefin, will turn some or all of it into sashimi. But there's like different sauces from around the world. So we have recipes for 5 of those.
I saw that was, I had to look twice at the bio for the book, and it said sashimi sauces, and then I made sure there wasn't a comma there. Like I thought it might be sashimi and then sauces, but it was sashimi sauces, which it does make, like when you go to a really nice sushi place and there's like, sometimes the sauce is so light that you almost don't even see that there is a sauce on there, but there is something like painted on there with like a paintbrush almost, and it does make a massive difference. So that all of that is in this book, like
everything,
all of the food and everything.
Yeah,
wow.
And there's the ultimate ceviche resource. We talked to people from like Ecuador and Peru, where ceviche came from, in the Baja, about how to make the stuff, and tips on grilling fish, searing fish, frying fish, how to do it with the stuff that you catch. And so it's not one of these stupid, catch, clean, and cook things, and let's make a pot pie recipe that nobody's ever going to use. It's applied things that like catch the fish. Here's how to do it straight from the source. That can like make your experience better. And then that's sort of the deal. And so started thinking that like there's an awful lot of overlap between offshore fishing and rum, and everybody knows everything about beer. I mean, beer is like a damn science experiment these days, you know? The hipsters have turned it into something you can't even go to the beer aisle, you know? It's like too much, you know? And everybody knows about wine, you know? But nobody knows anything about rum. So I was like, man. So I called Cosmo. I was like, hey, you got a rum guy? And he's like, yeah, talk to my buddy Dave. So I called Dave, and Dave's the beverage director at the Windsor House at Island Creek, which is a restaurant in Duxbury, Massachusetts that has 70 rums on tap.
Wow.
And so talk to him about everything. So we have the Traveling Fisherman's Guide to Rum that, you know, breaks down it's like 40 pages long. I mean, it could work as like an academic text, you know what I mean? But it's great. It's super excited about it. Like how to find good rum, what makes good rum, the classifications, the rum landscape internationally for your travel, how to find good stuff here in the States, how to mix it. And
interesting. You know, that is true. You got the beer, the wine. Now you have a whole bunch of people that are all into bourbon.
Right.
And they have the bourbon tours. I'm going to go on one next week. We're going to the Kentucky game. My daughter goes to Auburn, and we're going, I think it's next week or in the next couple of weeks. There's a contingency. Her roommate is from Kentucky. And so they invited us all up there, and we're going to go to Keeneland, and then we're going to do this bourbon tour. But I was asking about the bourbon tour because it's just interesting, like how into bourbon some people are.
Sure.
And, you know, it all goes to like the barrel, and there's like this whole industry of people that craft those barrels.
Sure.
And then they gotta do it just right. And what is it about rum that makes that an island kind of thing?
Well, it's where it came from. I mean, so sugarcane is the precursor to rum. I only know this because I did a bunch of research, you know, but it's native originally to like Papua New Guinea. So by the 1500s, when Spain started coming to this part of the world, they had planted sugarcane in like Madeira and some of those islands that are in the eastern, you know, Atlantic. They actually brought sugarcane on the second voyage to the New World, and it wasn't endemic to here. So, and then by the middle of the, you know, 1500s, by the 1600s, there was sugarcane just about everywhere, and there were like mills to, you know, cultivate it and then turn it into molasses. And then molasses was then, you know, either exported, and the byproduct of like the sugarcane process was turned into rum. And so rum is like super fascinating because there was a time in the 1700s when it was on par with gold as a medium for exchange in Europe.
Wow.
And so it was part of a triangular trade that happened between like the New World, you know, Africa and Europe. And, you know, I mean, there's some bad, dark parts of the history in terms of slavery and stuff. But, you know, like rum was exported, you know, from the New World, and finished goods came from Europe, and, you know, there was a human trade from Africa. But, I mean, in terms of like geopolitical importance and interesting backstories, like there's not, I don't think, another, you know, drink or, you know, spirit that can compare. Yeah. The interesting thing is that if you were to superimpose the map where you can grow sugarcane and the map where you can catch blue marlin, there's like a whole high degree of overlap. And then, so like, and it's also like a new world drink. I mean, the first time that rum was ever mentioned in history books was in Barbados in 1650. And so it came from here. And so it's like, you know, the places you're fishing, if you're fishing in this part of the world, make rum. And so that's super fascinating. So then you can like compare, you can go to your trip, go catch your, you know, sailfish, your blue marlin, your yellowfin tuna, and then, you know, the different islands that you go to or the different places. And like Central America has its own distinct, you know, rum style. The islands do. I mean, Boston even has its own interesting, you know, New England has its own interesting rum history. They're able to do that. They can't grow sugarcane, but they could, you know, turn the molasses into rum. And so it's super great. So it's all in the book, you know. And then, so I was like, well, we have these 11 fish that we profiled. And part of the thing that's so fun about like going around and fishing is like there's different drinks in all of these places. So we have like a book of cocktails that are inspired by the fish and the places and people who catch them. And so we got a ranch water recipe from Texas from the Billfish Pachanga, which, you know, I'm a Texas guy. It's tequila, soda, and lime, and it's great. You know, everybody likes it, you know, and but nobody knows too much about it. We've got the Blue Marlin cocktail is actually a daiquiri. So everybody thinks of strawberry daiquiri, but like Dave Cagle, the rum expert, he's like, no, man, daiquiri is like the most iconic rum drink in history. Just, you know, rum, simple syrup, and lime, and it makes rum sing because rum's made of sugar, and rum loves lime, and so you do those three things together, and it's just like, wow, this is great. So,
so what makes that the Blue Marlin drink?
Oh, just because like the Blue Marlin maybe could be the official, like, you know, for many people catching the Blue Marlin's like the ultimate in terms of offshore fishing.
Right.
And, this is like the iconic rum drink. So you say, hey, here you go. Like rum's the whiskey of the sea, and Blue Marlin's like...
They must catch a lot of them in Louisiana because they sure do drink a lot of daiquiris up there.
That's it, buddy. So, they do. We profiled, Venice, Louisiana.
Yes.
In the book, and...
Where does that sit? Like in terms of like ranking, worldwide ranking, where would you think Venice, Louisiana might fall in there? I know you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but like, is it mid pack? Is it?
Well, so that's the thing about the book, right? Like the whole world has been, with the internet and everything, has been like distilled into like a giant top 5 list. Everything's a damn top 5 list, and everybody just wants to like look and clickbait and blah, this, that, and the other,
Sure.
So like this book has tried not to do that. You know what I mean? And so like I also haven't taken a dime or a dollar from anybody. I have people like, oh my God, I would like to sponsor this book or this section. I said, man, I really appreciate that, but I can't do it. I want it to be free and clear because, you know how it is.
Sure.
There's all kind of money changing hands and people don't know. And so it's like, look, man, I'll make my money on the back end, but like on the front end, I'm not going to mess with it. So, Venice is great. It's great. But that being said, you could sink your boat in yellowfin tuna. You can go catch damn as many tile fish as you want, like red snapper. The damn things would eat you if you fell in, you catch wahoo and the mullet are coming out of the river. And it's great, but that said, blue marlin fishing is good, swordfish, daytiming, the whole deal. It's wonderful. Go see the rigs. It's awesome. That said, if you go there, know that you're going to the end of the world and you better like fishing. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I like your approach about different trips for different people. Like everybody, you have all these different anglers that are at different places in their fishing career, their fishing life. Some people, they've never caught a blue marlin. They've gone to 10 different places. They still haven't caught one. All they want to do is catch one. They don't care about the accommodations. They don't care about anything else. And then there's other people that have caught plenty of them. They want their wife or daughter or son or friend to experience this, and they know that this person is not as avid as they are, and so they got about 2 days, 2-3 days in them. Like, is there a place we can go and then do some other things as well? Like, I love that because that is something that you don't really get when you go to these guide booking services. I don't know. I've only been to a couple of them, so I'm speaking ignorantly, but that seems like something that's missing. Like, where is a place that you go and there are other things to do? And then where is another place that you go where I'm only after the big one, right? Like, I'll sleep on a cot. I will go on a commercial vessel. Food. I'll do whatever. I want that one, right? And there's that angler. And then there's another, then there's these other anglers. And so there's a best place for a lot of different people, right? But there's no best place. If someone tells you there's a best place for anything, they're like a magazine ad salesperson, or they're, trying to trick you into something. You know what I mean? Like should not, you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't believe that to be true. You know what I mean? Like, so. Well, but the way that we're describing it is that a lot of places could be considered the best to a wide variety of different people. Somebody might want to catch something on fly, and there is a better place for that than somewhere else. Somebody might want to take, their whole family, and there's a much better place for that than some of the other places where literally you might be wondering if you're going to have pirates. Like, that's it. But if you're like into it, bring the pirates, whatever. I've been after this fish for my entire life. I've got tons of money. I'm trying to get this one thing, so I'll go wherever. Well, then that's why that's the core of this book. Yeah, is speaking to that, and then also not only speaking to those people who have been after a certain thing for so long, but also to the people who grew up in Tennessee, or a small town in Texas. They grew up fishing on lakes and rivers and maybe dreamed of catching a blue marlin, but who goes blue marlin fishing? And like, how do you know? Where do you start? Because a lot of media is written for people who already know. And then, so it's like a super daunting thing. It's a barrier to entry in terms of like, where do I go to catch fish and how do I find something that's trustworthy? And then you look at the price tag that's associated and you're like, man, I don't know about this, and it's crazy. Like, you Google this, good luck to you, you know what I mean? Have fun with your bed bugs, Right. And so this is made for somebody who grew up in Wisconsin, who like fishes for muskie and walleye. But it's like, hey, would that person like to catch a blue marlin? Of course they would, and like, here's the information that you need. And so you can compare it and come to your conclusion based on
the location, which is like 260 pages. In the United States, it starts in South Texas and Port Mansfield, all the way up to Massachusetts on the East Coast. Three spots in Texas: Venice, Louisiana; Orange Beach, Alabama; Destin, Pensacola; South Florida and the Keys, which is from Key West to Stewart; Charleston, North Carolina, with stops in Morehead City and the Outer Banks; Virginia Beach, Ocean City, Maryland; to New Jersey, and to Massachusetts. And then skipping over to the West Coast, San Diego and Southern California, and then Kona. And then with somebody talk to in each of those places that provides, a high-end fishing guy, either charter, tournament director, boat owner who's been there a long time, people that own marinas. And so it's not a sales pitch for the place, but it's somebody who knows and is intimately involved in the place, describing why somebody should come and what they can expect once they get there. And then so we do the same thing, with 4 spots in Costa Rica, 3 in Panama, 1 in Guatemala, mainland Mexico, and Los Cabos, and, down to South America, all the high spots, going across the way to like South Africa and Mozambique and up to Kenya, and then the Eastern Atlantic, being the Madeira, the Azores, and Cape Verde. We talked to Marty Bates, who runs a charter operation there, and Frothy De Silva, who's been around forever and ever and is a wonderful human being who makes Madeira accessible to people from all over the place. Zach Conde in the Azores. Talked to a guy that runs an operation in Sardinia, which is in the Mediterranean. And then, profile a little bit of like mainland Portugal, where they catch giant, white marlin and giant blue marlin. And then in the Caribbean, the Bahamas, Bermuda, Dominican Republic, on and on. So it's like the high spots. And then I was like, well, if this book is going to be good, well, I should talk about the South Pacific, So I talked to a guy named Chris Donato, who spent 10 years running boats in the South Pacific, holds the Samoan national record with a 1,025-pound blue marlin.
Wow.
Now he runs a boat in Kona, so he helped me with the Kona profile. And then I talked to Tom Francis, who's a wonderful person from New Zealand, grew up in Papua New Guinea, and runs maybe the most remote and globe-trotting operation in the world. Told me all about the Marquesas and where they catch all the things that they catch over there, and it's incredible. And then so I was like, well, the book was going to be good. It would also include Japan, because Japan has an incredible culture of fishing, and a lot of the gear that we use and the approaches that we use and the techniques came from there. So I talked to the senior director of the Japan Big Game Fishing Club, and he told me all about it. And then we talked to a guy in Okinawa, which is the only place that I know of where they've caught 2 2,000-pound blue marlin. And those were commercially caught fish, but the tunner, the mythical tunner, it's great, So it's all here, and then so you can compare it that way. And then there's introductions to each of the fish that are written for, people that know about it and who have done it, but that are also accessible and approachable for people who haven't before. Mm-hmm. In the midst of all of these things, there's wonderful photography. I worked with Jessica Haydall, who's one of my favorite people in the world. She's been on magazine covers all over the place. Her pictures are all throughout the book. And, so the destination piece, it's the pictures come from the places of the people that I talk to. And so it's a nice mix of professional photography and things that are taken on the spot. And so it's just the destination piece is 265 pages, I believe. And you can go through around the world just reading and looking. And it's great. And there's nothing like it. And I'm so excited about it. And so I'm able to say.
Super cool. Here's a question that I had while
Sure.
you were, you just rattled off some of the greatest fishermen on the planet, probably, and in their respective areas, right, for marlin fishing and stuff. Out of all those people, did you kind of become aware of any similarities between the extreme high players in that type of fishing? That anything that strikes you as kind of like, man, these guys are all similar in this way?
Yeah, I guess it wasn't something that I became aware of doing this. It was something that I'd come to know before, but my favorite part about it is how passionate these people are. Because you don't accidentally find yourself in a career running a boat on some tropical island in the middle of nowhere, chasing blue marlin. One of the things I love most about marlin fishing is the interplay of people from all over the world, from New Zealand, from Australia, from South Africa, from the United States, and how the places where people come from influence how they approach. And then so you have this incredible melting pot of stories. And then you take these people who are like good at telling stories to begin with, that are like super interesting, you know? And then we're like, well, their work involves chasing these giant ass fish in like beautiful places in the middle of nowhere. And so they get to see these extreme things that never happen to anybody else, you know? And so you take people who are like adventurous and who love life and who love what they do, and you turn them loose onto something that's probably the most incredible, most beautiful, most exhilarating thing in the world, at least for me, for like marlin fishing, you know? And then they do this more often, and then they get to see all kinds of things. And so like the interesting thing for me is that all these guys, you talk to like a charter captain who's been at it for a long time, they can all remember the biggest fish they caught, but they also all remember the one that was bigger that they lost.
Yes.
And, you know, they'll remember the number of stripes it had, how wide its shoulders were, the distance between its dorsal and its tail, what lure it came up on, who their charter was on that day, and all of that. And it's so fascinating. And then most of them will tell you the date. And when they do, they're like enraptured. You know, it's like they're transported somewhere else. And it's like the story becomes alive, you know? And so to me, that's what this is about. I mean, like fishing stories, like, you know, there's a book of fishing stories in this deal too. But like, you know, that's part of this, but also I tell people that like every book that's been published about fishing since Hemingway died all have the same, you know, moral or tagline. And you know what it is? I have a passion for fishing. I want to share it with you, you know? Well, that's great, you know, but like this book isn't that. Like I have a passion for fishing too, but this has a clear takeaway. It's all the stuff that you need to plan the trip that's right for you. You know what I mean? And to research and to give you all the information. There's no like, hey, buy this, and then before you get anything, buy something else. It's all here, you know? And if after reading it, you feel good and you want to take it a little bit further, give me a call. I can, you know, help you out. You know, that kind of deal.
One of the things that you were just mentioning there about like people from all around the world coming together to, you know, for this, you know, to try to catch this particular fish. I mean, it could be any fish. And I've had some really great experiences, like going to Costa Rica or a place like that where, you know, the language is Spanish.
Sure.
We're trying to catch sailfish. I have high school Spanish. But somehow I can communicate to these guys that I'm your guide. I'm also a guide. And they're like, oh, where? And you're like, in the United States, in Key West. And they're like, Key West? They've heard of Key West.
Sure.
And then they're like, you know, in this broken Spanish English that we're trying to communicate in, you're still learning a tremendous amount. And you see that those guys, like once they see that you've got something that you could offer them, like in terms of knowledge or like experience, it's like a white belt mentality of like, let me hear what you got. Like in your worst broken Spanish, let me hear what you've got. Let me show you. You start tying a knot, and they're like, oh, let me see what you're doing there. And then it's like, vela, izquierda. And then you're like, okay, left, there's a sail on the left, which is about as much Spanish as I have. But at the end of the week, you come together and you're like, it's like a long lost brother that you found.
Sure.
And those are some of the greatest experiences ever. And it's not just bill fishing. Like you go to Christmas Island and you're talking to these South Pacific Islanders, and they speak pretty good English, and enough to let them know, like, I come from this other little island, and this is what we do too. And then they start asking all these questions, and then you start asking all these questions, and then there's this exchange of knowledge that's going on, and that's some of my favorite things about travel, like, and just experiencing these other people that, just like you're talking about, that, I mean, and it is trite at this point of, they're just so passionate. But
that's it. It's a shared passion.
It is a shared passion. And especially when there's some sort of a small language barrier that you're having to get around, that makes it even more fun, I think. Because
it's the best thing in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And then you can take the same thing. It's like the approach to fishing, the approach to how you cook and eat the thing that you catch, the approach to the drinks that you make on the ride back in. You know what I mean? It's it. And like the thing about fishing that's so fascinating is it's been doing this to people. That thing that you're talking about since Jesus, and since before him, and it's been doing it to men and women, and it's been doing it like throughout history around the world. It knows no bounds. You know what I mean? And it's still doing it today. I mean, it's ruined my life. You know what I mean? I love it. You know what I mean? But like, but like you can see a kid, like walking around, there's a kid fishing. You're like, he's got it. You know what I mean? He's got the twitch. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it means something. You're like, awesome. That kid's awesome. Come on, kid, let's go. You know what I mean? It's it, and it still does it. It's that, and that's what it is.
That's cool.
And
so you have all these ideas for the book, and it sounds like you got about 7 books all wrapped into one, and you are already a writer. You've done a tremendous amount of writing, and you're an editor. Did you need help to write this book? It seems like at almost that you have so many ideas that this could have gone so off the rails and into oblivion of not a book, like just a bunch of stories. Like, who helped you? How did you put the book together?
Well, I had a lot of help with a lot of things. I didn't have any help writing it. I interviewed a lot of people, but so when I started this, the thing that was most important to me was that when I'm done, that it's good and that it's done the right way. Like I didn't want one of these self-published books that looked like one of them painting elephants made. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? And then so I had people, oh man, I got a guy who's going to this and that. I'm like, I appreciate it, man. But like, I want to work with book people and I want to work with business people. You know what I mean? Like I'll handle the fishing side, So in terms of like the stories and the content, the damn thing kept growing, and it took longer than I thought, I kept coming back to, well, if it's going to be a good book, if it's going to be a proper book, it would include this, And then, so at some point I said, I have to stop saying that because it's good and proper enough, So
it's going to be your life's work here.
That's it. I say I can't do this, So it took me, I started last July, July of 2023. I just got the proof finished at the printer last week, so 15 months, I guess. But so I started writing it, and it was actually my computer guy. He's like, hey, man, you should write a book. I was like, man, I don't write a book. And he's like, no, you really should. So I was like, okay, well, actually, I've been thinking about this book on travel fishing. So I had thought about books before, but I let all the details stop me from doing it because of all the things that go. So this time I'm like, well, I'm just going to write it, and I'll figure it all out as I go. So navigated like the publishing landscape and came to the conclusion that like I would do it on my own and run it through my website. And that was sort of at the advice of a publisher that I talked to who was a client of my computer guy. And he's been doing it a long time. And he's like, this is what I would suggest. Think about this. I'm like, okay, that's great. So then I was like, well, I need it to look good. So I hired a book designer who was super awesome. And he's been around for a long time. And he worked for big publishing houses. And he's been on his own for 10 or 15 years. And he actually laid out Stephen Hawking's second book. And
really?
So
wow.
I hired him, A Briefer History of Time. And so I hired him and I was like, hey, man, I have the fishing stuff handled, but like, I just need this book to look good for a book guy, So we, back and forth. But most of the, design and inspiration stuff was him. I provided him all the text and all the pictures and he laid it out and, And then I also hired an editor to kind of go through and, make sense of everything, in terms of like organization, typos, formatting, all of that kind of stuff. And she actually used to edit Entrepreneur magazine. And so I tried to do everything the right way and hire good people who experienced and, let them do what they do, And so she came from a place that wasn't fishing. So we, had this joke. I said, well, if there's a fishing term that you don't understand, let's assume that it's correct. If there's a joke that goes farther than you would take it, let's leave that. But if there's any like regular English words that are typos or used, improperly, let's fix those, So it was good. And so I wound up, for both the editor and the designer, I wound up paying them like more than I thought because the damn thing kept growing, but it's okay because it turned out great, So, it just kept growing and growing and growing. But then I was like, let's, put it all together into some kind of thing that makes sense. I thought it was going to be 400 pages, and I thought that was like gigantic. It grew to be 588 pages, but wow. It's okay. It's good. It's great. I'm happy. I'm like over the moon about how it is. Like I can promise that if somebody buys it, they'll like it. There's nothing like it. It's something that's needed. I talked to Ray Rocher. I profiled him in that charter directory deal. He's great. He's been a charter captain in Miami for 30 years. He's a good buddy of mine. He's in the IGFA Hall of Fame. And when I called him and told him about the book, you know what he said? it's about time someone did that.
Nice.
So it's applied and useful. So like in the introduction, there's a piece that says, I wrote the book on travel fishing with the hope that it might bring the same joy, wonder, and fulfillment to your life that it's brought to mine. Now
Nice.
my girls are like 8 and 9, and I get to do the same thing for them, and it's wonderful. So it's a passport. I'm asking $50 for the book, which is less than a dime a page. So it's expensive, but it's less than a pack of ballyhoo. And
what's the distribution like? How do people get it?
Well, it's on my website, Fish Travel Eat, and so it's actually at the printer now. I'll have it December 1st, and in time for shipping at Christmas. So I'm opening up the pre-orders kind of as we speak, and first run is limited. It's 1,000 copies, and
Nice.
we'll see what happens. And then so when that's done, I'm going to order some more and go do all the things.
Wow, that's a lot of work, man. It sounds like a really amazing book. I mean, I'm almost as interested in the food part of it as I am in the fishing part of it, and that would not be the case. Like, I just like the way that you started to talk about like food and drink from these particular areas, which is a lot different than somebody like just putting a book out with your favorite recipes.
Right.
Like, this is like, I don't know how they do ceviche, where ceviche started. That's pretty cool.
That's it. And how to do it yourself.
Yeah, I like it. That's cool.
Thanks, man.
Well, I'll definitely get a copy. That's
Appreciate
pretty cool.
that, man.
I really like it.
Thank you.
Cool. So why don't we finish up with the hot seat questions?
All right, let's do it.
These questions sometimes I'll start with them in the beginning, but we had a good story about the tag sailfish, so this is going to the end. All right, so this is kind of either or, just quick answers. The most underrated fish that you've caught while traveling?
Underrated fish caught while traveling. I don't know, Jack Crevalle. Everybody hates Jack Crevalle, but I like them.
Not
One
me,
of them ruined my
man.
life.
I love them. One ruined your life too? Because
man.
That's what happened to me.
No, I was 12 years old. It was the first time I ever went offshore. I talked my dad into taking me on a party boat out of Port Aransas, Texas, and I was puking everywhere, trying to catch kingfish. Some mate hooked something. He said, "Here you go, kid." So like here I am chasing this, 40-inch Jack Crevalle around this party boat on a broomstick rod, and old senator puking and reeling. I have a skin mount of the fish, hanging up in the house. And that's the joke. It's like that fish ruined my life, because if it weren't for that, I'd be like, to hell with that. I'm never going offshore again. All I'll do is puke,
Right. Good job for that guy. I was trying to catch a tarpon in some lights, and I threw the fly out there as best I could at the time, which wasn't very far off of the shore. And a Jack Crevalle came up and ate the fly and took off and literally took every inch of line except for about 6. And I literally had like 2 turns of line on the fly reel and brought it all the way back. And I get it in, and I was like, I think it's a bonefish. Like, I was so excited because I had never caught a bonefish at that point. I think it's a bonefish. It's got to be a bonefish. I get it in. It's a Jack Crevalle. I'm like, and ever since then, like, well, I don't know what's wrong with that fish. Like, I would have had a tarpon in
Sure
30 seconds, right? So anyway, I had the.
I pack Imodium AD all the time, like as a result, and because you should. Oh, there's a travel logistics section too about the book,
there
like
is?
what to bring, how to bring stuff.
Nice.
Changing
We're going to
money,
talk
how
about
to
that
get
in the How To Tuesdays. Sunrise or sunset?
Man, I like sunset. The reason I like fishing at sunset, because if you're doing it, you're with your friends, or you're in the middle of the damn Gulf of Mexico on a triple overnight swordfish trip. But either way, it's awesome, because if you're on a standard charter deal, they'd have dropped your ass off at the dock back at 4:00 sharp,
Yeah.
But if you're sunset, you're with your buddy.
I like that. Nobody's ever explained it like that, but that's right. One place that you have not been but would like to go.
Man, Bermuda,
Okay.
New Zealand.
New Zealand, nice. The most difficult fish to catch on all the travels you've been on,
Phew, man.
and technique.
Well, the longest I spent on a fish was a big ass swordfish in Texas. We were on it for 5 hours,
Wow.
And pulled him off right next to the boat, and hooked him at 3 p.m. Finished up. It was dark, and it was wild. Called it Large Marge. Actually, the story about it is in the book. And so yeah, I guess that was the most difficult.
A surprising fact about billfish.
Man, that they will ruin your life, and you'll be happy to let them.
Favorite fish to eat and how you would prepare it?
Man, I like bluefin tuna. I mean, that sounds kind of, but it's great. I mean, actually we make sushi quite a bit at the house. My girls help. There's a recipe in the book. There's a whole redneck guide to redneck sushi. It's in the book, how to do it, and so make it all kind of different ways and have a whole spread and have a party. You can sear some, you can do it, invite all your buddies, and it's a great way to bring fishing home. It's a transfiguration. That makes sense.
Can you have a productive trip without catching a fish?
Sure. Yes, it's about the person. I mean, there's lots of times that didn't catch anything, but I enjoyed it more. And you go out fishing with some guy's an asshole, and you catch a bunch of fish. You're like, man, no thanks.
One destination you'd like to visit that does not include fishing?
Oh man, well, I guess Alaska. I mean, you can go fishing in Alaska, but I'd like to go pay a visit to a moose.
Yep. Moose are awesome. Be careful though. 3 people, avid anglers, should fish with before they die.
Oh man. Oh, this is great. My buddy Kiwi Van Leeuwen, he runs a place called Sailfish Oasis Lodge in Guatemala. He's great. I mean, people from New Zealand are great with stories, and he's been all over the world. He's wonderful. I love fishing with him. Let's see. Kiwi, man, there's going to be some people that are mad at me.
It's just 3, not the top 3.
Okay.
Three.
Just three.
Just any 3.
Man, I like fishing with my buddy Anthony Lopez. He's a swordfish guy in Texas. He was the one with, Large Marge, he's got a operation down there. And then, maybe let's see. Bouncer Smith, he's a wonderful person too. He's a retired charter captain. He was in Miami for 50 years fishing. You probably couldn't fish with him anymore, but because he doesn't fish that much. But boy, he's a national treasure of sport fishing.
National treasure and stories, and podcast alumni twice.
There you go.
Had him. He is a national treasure. So shout out to Bouncer. 2 places to eat before we die.
Ooh, man. Man, this is all over the board. It's like mental gymnastics, I got it. I got one. It's the Windsor House in Duxbury, Massachusetts. I was just up there. It's great. Cosmo's a consulting chef. Island Creek Oysters owns the place, and boy, they bring out all kinds of stuff. And they have 70 kinds of rum on tap, so you can't beat it.
Wow.
And then, well, not on tap, but anyway, they have bottles of 70 different kinds. But and then, one place that I awfully like to go is the Hookup in Los Sueños, Costa Rica, just because it's associative memory. Maybe you could get better food in some other places, but I'll be damned if having a cold beer, watching the marina, and talking with the people you're talking to there isn't a wonderful thing to do.
Love it. Cooked or raw?
Depends what you're after. Tuna, don't overcook it. Raw is great. Wahoo, ceviche, man, hard to beat. Fried dolphin, boy, dolphin ceviche, depends. Both.
Yeah, both. Text or call?
Man, I'm a call guy. I'm not a very good millennial. If it's more than 3 texts, I just call. And people are like, what?
Okay. What location have you visited that had the best coffee?
Ooh, man. Costa Rica's got some pretty good coffee, and they showcase it,
they definitely have good coffee.
And then about the 4th day of fishing, no matter what kind of coffee they brought, you'd be happy to have it, so that probably has something to do with it too.
Yep. How about the worst?
Oh man, the worst. It's a pretty nasty coffee at some of the marinas around, And your neck of the woods is one I'm thinking of, but I don't want to say it. Maybe you're like, damn, from last week,
You look at the pot and it's
yeah,
never been washed.
That's it.
Yes,
that's it.
Same thing. All right. That's cool, man. Well, I like the answers. That was great. And it was really great catching up with you again. I mean, I hadn't talked to you since 2012. But you sound like you've just had an amazing life since then. And we're going to do a couple of How-To Tuesdays with Elliot, and they will definitely help you on your travels. This is a man that's traveled more than anybody I know, probably. And we're going to ask him some questions about travel. So stick around for the How-To Tuesdays later. But Elliot Stark, the book on travel fishing, you can get it on his website, which is, tell us the website again.
Fish Travel Eat.
fishtraveleat.com, a great blog, some really good articles on there, and I'm sure some of those came from the book, but maybe not. I did read a couple of those this morning. You're a good writer, for sure.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, so fishtraveleat.com, get the book on travel fishing, especially if you're interested in catching a marlin sometime in your life, or you've already caught a bunch and you're looking for a new place to go. It sounds like he has it covered worldwide. But Elliot, I appreciate you coming, man. It's great.
Thank you, buddy. I sure appreciate it, man. It's been fun.
You bet. Well, good luck with the book.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.